Scarlet Street, 1945. Scarlet Street, 1945, isn't just another film noir. It's a slow descent into the wreckage of the human soul. Directed by the master of shadows, Fritz Lang, the film tells the haunting story of Christopher Cross, a lonely, meek cashier stuck in a joyless marriage, who dreams of being a great painter. When he meets the seductive Kitty March, played with chilling allure by Joan Bennett, he's instantly drawn into a dangerous illusion. Kitty pretends to love him, but she's using him, milking him for money and status, while secretly laughing behind his back with her real lover. As Chris becomes more entangled in the fantasy, his grip on reality begins to slip. What starts as a forbidden romance soon mutates into a web of deception, blackmail, and ultimately murder. There are no heroes here, only victims of their own desires. When the final act drops, it leaves you breathless, a man destroyed not just by others, but by the lies he tells himself. The film was so unsettling and morally bleak that it was banned in several cities, deemed too corrupt and disturbing for public consumption. There's no redemption, no justice, just a broken man haunted by voices of the past, doomed to walk the streets, forever cursed by guilt. Scarlet Street wasn't just too dark for Hollywood, it was too real. Fritz Lang dared to expose the raw, uncomfortable truth that sometimes evil wins, and the punishment isn't jail. It's living with yourself afterward. No wonder Hollywood tried to bury it. Kiss Me Deadly, 1955. Kiss Me Deadly, 1955, is a film that didn't just flirt with chaos, it detonated it. Directed by Robert Aldrich, this explosive noir redefined the genre, injecting it with paranoia, nuclear fear, and a cold cynicism that rattled audiences to their core. The story opens with a barefoot woman running for her life on a lonely highway. Private Detective Mike Hammer picks her up, but he has no idea he's just opened Pandora's box. What follows is a brutal, high-speed plunge into a world of betrayal, violence, and something much darker. Something locked in a mysterious glowing box that everyone is willing to kill for. Unlike the typical gumshoe, Mike Hammer isn't noble. He's greedy, self-centered, and rough to the point of cruelty. And yet, he's the only one who seems remotely capable of surviving the storm. But survival comes at a price. As he chases leads, people die, lots of them, and the body count rises along with the tension. The real twist? That glowing box. A radioactive MacGuffin that hinted at Cold War nightmares too taboo for Hollywood to handle. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of humanity's doom, and the ending, well, it wasn't an ending at all. It was a burning scream. Censors were horrified. The violence was raw, the sex was suggestive, and the paranoia, off the charts. The original cut was even suppressed for years, its final moments too disturbing for audiences in the atomic age. But Kiss Me Deadly endured, becoming one of the most iconic and controversial noir films ever made. It didn't just push boundaries, it blew them wide open. In the end, it wasn't the mystery that stayed with you. It was the feeling that something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong, and no one was coming to fix it. The Big Heat, 1953. The Big Heat, 1953, is a film that burns slow, but leaves scars. Directed by Fritz Lang, this noir masterpiece dives into the boiling rage of a good man pushed to the brink. Glenn Ford plays Detective Dave Banyan, a straight-arrow cop who starts asking too many questions after a fellow officer's mysterious suicide. At first, it looks like a closed case, but then Banyan pulls a thread, and the whole fabric of corruption begins to unravel. What he uncovers is a criminal empire deeply entangled with the city's political elite, and they'll do anything to keep their secrets buried. But it's not just the lies or the threats that transform Banyan. It's the brutal murder of his wife, killed by a car bomb meant for him. That moment flips the switch. The lawman becomes a one-man crusade, no longer bound by the rules he once upheld. Banyan becomes a force of vengeance, crashing through the city's underworld with fire in his eyes. But even as he tracks the syndicate down, he's haunted by what he's becoming. Then there's Gloria Graham as Debbie, playful, tragic, and unforgettable. She begins as a mobster's girlfriend, but her arc is the film's emotional core. After a shocking act of violence, when a scalding pot of coffee is thrown in her face, she turns from victim to avenger. The imagery was so graphic, so psychologically jarring, that it stunned audiences and censors alike. The Big Heat was considered too brutal, too bleak, and far too real for its time. It didn't just hint at the darkness beneath the surface of society. It set it on fire. Hollywood tried to soften its punch, but couldn't extinguish the rage at its core. This wasn't just noir. It was vengeance with a badge. Touch of Evil, 1958. Touch of Evil 1958 wasn't just ahead of its time. It blew past it, leaving Hollywood scrambling in its wake. Directed by and starring Orson Welles, this film opens with one of the most iconic shots in cinema history, a continuous, suspenseful tracking shot following a car with a ticking bomb. That shot alone was enough to jolt audiences. But what followed was something darker, weirder, and far more unsettling than anything noir had dared before. Set on a seedy U.S.-Mexico border town, the story follows Mexican drug enforcement officer Miguel Mike Vargas, played by Charlton Heston, who stumbles into a twisted web of corruption after a deadly explosion. Standing in his way is police captain Hank Quinlan, portrayed by Welles himself, an aging, bloated, and utterly terrifying figure who plants evidence, bends the law, and lets prejudice guide his every move. Quinlan isn't just corrupt, he's rotting from the inside out. As Vargas digs deeper, his new American bride becomes a pawn in a terrifying game. Drugged, kidnapped, and framed, she's left alone in a motel run by a creepy gang that feels like something out of a fever dream. The whole film oozes paranoia and decay, with shadows that stretch like nightmares and morality that shifts like desert sand. Hollywood didn't know what to do with Touch of Evil. The studio butchered Welles' original cut, slicing away the madness and chaos that made it brilliant. It was too strange, too raw, too un-American for its time. Only years later, with the restored version, did critics finally realize the truth. This wasn't just a noir, it was a prophecy. A grim portrait of power, race, and corruption that hit far too close to home. Detour, 1945. Detour 1945 is a raw, jagged little film that feels more like a confession than a movie. Shot in just 6 days on a shoestring budget, it became one of the most haunting noir tales ever told. There's nothing polished here, only shadows, guilt, and the terrifying idea that fate is always one wrong turn away. The story follows Al Roberts, a down-on-his-luck piano player hitchhiking to California to reunite with his girlfriend. But somewhere along the desolate highways of America, everything goes to hell. He's picked up by a stranger who suddenly dies in the car. Panicking, Al assumes the man's identity, thinking he's dodged a disaster. Instead, he drives straight into one. Enter Vera, played with acidic venom by Ann Savage, one of the most vicious femmes fatale in film history. She sees right through Al's lies and blackmails him, dragging him into a twisted spiral of manipulation and mutual hate. Their relationship is pure poison, no romance, just survival. Every conversation crackles with tension, as if the film might explode from the pressure. Detour is drenched in fatalism. Al insists he's innocent, a victim of circumstance. But the film whispers something colder. Maybe he always had this darkness in him. Maybe the real Detour wasn't on the road. It was inside him all along. Hollywood didn't know what to make of Detour. It broke all the rules. The main character isn't a hero, the ending isn't tidy, and the world it paints is brutally indifferent. Censors tried to downplay its bleak message, but it was too late. The film had already clawed its way into the shadows of American cinema. Detour doesn't need car chases or big budgets. It gets under your skin with nothing but dread, silence, and the haunting voice of a man who knows he's already lost. Pick Up on South Street, 1953. Pick Up on South Street, 1953 is a film that slips through your fingers like a stolen wallet, quick, quiet, and dangerously sharp. Directed by Samuel Fuller, this Cold War noir didn't just flirt with controversy. It kicked the door down and dared the audience to look away. It begins with a subway ride, a crowded train, and a slick pickpocket named Skip McCoy. In just a few swift moves, he lifts a purse from a woman named Candy. But this isn't just a petty theft. Inside that purse is top-secret microfilm intended for communist spies. Suddenly, Skip finds himself at the center of a political hurricane, but he couldn't care less about ideology. He's not a patriot. He's not a traitor. He's just a grifter looking to cash in. That moral ambiguity, where greed trumps loyalty, is what makes this film so bold. As Candy, a street-smart but vulnerable woman, pleads with Skip to return the film and avoid the bloodshed, the tension between them simmers with distrust, desire, and desperation. The film's emotional anchor is Mo, the elderly stool pigeon played by Thelma Ritter. Her heartbreaking performance earned an Oscar nomination, especially in a scene where she faces death with a quiet, defiant dignity. She doesn't ask for pity, just enough money for a decent burial. At the time of its release, pickup on South Street enraged censors and raised eyebrows across America. How could a film paint a criminal as the reluctant hero, while downplaying Cold War hysteria? J. Edgar Hoover himself reportedly hated it. But that's what made it unforgettable. This wasn't just a noir, it was a slap in the face to conventional morality. With sweaty palms, shadowy alleys, and a heart that beats with cynicism, Pickup on South Street made sure nobody left the theater clean. The Naked Kiss, 1964. The Naked Kiss 1964 asterisk is not your typical noir. It's a shocking dive into the dark underbelly of small-town America, directed by the fearless Samuel Fuller. The story follows Kelly, a former prostitute who arrives in a quiet town desperate for a fresh start. But her past refuses to stay buried, and the town's polished surface soon cracks, revealing a sinister world of hypocrisy, corruption, and cruelty. Kelly's struggle is raw and emotional. She fights not only to rebuild her life, but to protect a young boy from the town's twisted adults. As she battles prejudice and her own demons, the film confronts taboo subjects head-on: prostitution, child abuse, and moral decay, in a way that was virtually unheard of in the 1960s. The stark black and white cinematography and Fuller's gritty direction turn the town into a character itself, claustrophobic, judgmental, and dangerous. The famous scene where Kelly brutally assaults a man who attacked her became a lightning rod for controversy, shocking audiences with its unflinching violence and intensity. Unlike many noirs that revel in shadows and mystery, The Naked Kiss exposes the raw wounds beneath. Hollywood tried to bury it for being too raw, too real, too uncomfortable. But it's precisely this brutal honesty that makes it unforgettable. A film that dares to show the ugliness behind the American dream and the strength it takes to face it. In the end, The Naked Kiss isn't just a noir. It's a savage, unflinching portrait of redemption and the cost of escaping your past. Night and the City 1950. Night and the City 1950 is a relentless plunge into the dark heart of post-war London, directed by Jules Dassin, whose own exile from Hollywood only adds to the film's grim undertone. The story follows Harry Fabian, a desperate, slick hustler who dreams big but plays dirty. From the moment Harry steps onto the rain-soaked streets, it's clear he's a man on the edge, hungry for success, yet trapped by his own reckless ambition. Harry's scheme to control the city's wrestling racket quickly unravels as he tangles with dangerous gangsters, corrupt promoters, and his own betrayals. But unlike many noir anti-heroes, Harry isn't charming or heroic. He's pathetic, paranoid, and doomed from a start. His flaws are his undoing, and the city itself seems to conspire against him, swallowing his hopes in a maze of shadows and deceit. The film's visual style is as unforgiving as its narrative. Tight, claustrophobic framing captures the gritty streets, smoky clubs, and seedy back alleys, creating a suffocating atmosphere that mirrors Harry's spiraling desperation. The pounding rain and darkness become characters themselves, reflecting the coldness and isolation Harry faces. Night and the City was too bleak and unrelenting for Hollywood's comfort. Its brutal portrayal of a man crushed by his own greed and the merciless urban jungle made studios uneasy. It was banned in some places and cut in others, seen as too nihilistic, too hopeless. But decades later, it stands as a cornerstone of noir cinema, a grim, unforgettable tale of ambition gone wrong, a city that devours the weak, and a man who gambled everything on a dream that turned to ash. Night and the City isn't just a movie, it's a warning. Some nights in the city are darker than the shadows. Gun Crazy 1950. Gun Crazy 1950 is a reckless plunge into obsession, violence, and doomed love, directed by Joseph H. Lewis. It's a film that explodes with raw energy, telling the story of Barter, a sharpshooter with a dangerous addiction to guns, and Annie Laurie Starr, a fiery woman who falls for his reckless charm. Together, they become partners in crime, spiraling into a wild, unstoppable spree of robberies and murder. What makes Gun Crazy unforgettable is its dizzying blend of passion and destruction. The chemistry between the leads crackles with an almost desperate intensity, as if their love could only survive in chaos. Their relationship isn't glamorous, it's toxic, violent, and fueled by the thrill of danger. From their first meeting at a carnival shooting gallery to their final tragic standoff, the film captures the intoxicating pull of adrenaline and the fatal price it demands. The film's visual style is just as daring. One iconic scene features a breathtaking, nearly 10-minute continuous tracking shot of Bart and Annie robbing a bank, creating an edge-of-your-seat tension that was revolutionary for its time. The handheld camera work and stark black-and-white contrasts mirror the film's themes of unpredictability and chaos. Gun Crazy was too raw, too wild, and too violent for many audiences when it premiered. Censors tried to tame it, but the film's relentless pace and bleak ending refused to be softened. It was a hard-hitting critique of American gun culture long before such conversations became mainstream. In the end, Gun Crazy isn't just a crime thriller. It's a dark, tragic romance about two souls addicted to destruction, locked in a fatal embrace that leaves nothing but ashes behind.